Alright, now to end this series, let's jump into some resources that can help you to prepare for the exam without textbooks or without paying for anything, because everything is out there for free right now with the internet. So for the reading part, you basically want to read many things, and I have found especially useful books, real books, but don't think that fiction books like novels or poetry or things like that are going to help you more, because yes, certainly you will be exposed to more complicated vocabulary, more literary, but the truth is that in the exam you won't be faced with those kinds of words, at least not for the most part. And if you spend a lot of time learning these words and expressions that appear in fiction, you're going to be wasting your time, which you could much better use learning other things like phrasal verbs. So read books, but non-fiction books I think are better because they contain more concise phrases, and that's the kind of language that you want to use or you want to get used to for this exam. You don't want to start writing very very long sentences that never end, that are very complicated, because you may get yourself into trouble doing that. Also, magazines are fine. Choose a topic that you enjoy and read them, because as non-fiction books they tend to have a more concise language. It is also good to read about many different topics to know some basic vocabulary about each of these topics. Again, Wikipedia or the internet to look up information about anything that you like, as long as it's in English. And Memrise or any other memorizing software is very nice for phrasal verbs, irregular verbs, and also for some idioms it can be of help. Yeah, as it says here, don't try to find any chance possible to write an idiom or to say an idiom and use it. People know, I mean, natives know the idioms, but even them don't use them so much. So don't try to overdo what they do not do. For listening resources, you want to get used to English as it's used in real situations. That doesn't mean that you need to know a lot of slang. It can help, but you won't encounter it in the exam. So, in general, TV, radio, or talking to natives, any of them is good. In my experience, talking to natives is not so helpful as for listening, because they tend to speak more clearly and more slowly than they usually do when they notice that you're not one of them. So many of them will try to help you by being more clear, and that will not be the real way in which they speak, but still many of them don't realize and will speak to you as they speak to their peers. So in general it can be helpful, but the kind of language that you will be listening to in the exam is not very informal, so don't only rely on speaking to natives, because they can be very informal at times, and then you will be taken aback in the exam. So as for TV, start with documentaries, and if you can follow them well, then move on, because documentaries are the easiest to understand. Then you can watch TV shows where they repeat the same kind of situations many times, so you can after a while understand everything. Then it's a good idea to listen to songs and to learn them if you like them, because If you're into that, you can even sing them later, and that will develop coordination. I will mention that again for the speaking. Then move on to any kind of series that is not interpreted by real people at the same time that they act, but things like cartoons or anime, in which some professional voice actors put their voice over the pictures, because these people are paid for being clear and speaking well, and you will understand them better than regular actors. Then you can move on to series and finally to movies, because in those two there will be many slang. The microphone will be sometimes far away from the speaker and you won't understand them very well, so these are the more challenging. Then it's also nice to listen to the radio, to podcasts. Many of the exercises of the CPE are taken from radio shows and radio interviews. And I particularly liked the BBC dramas that you can find on YouTube. They are very interesting and you are exposed to real English, just like the one you will find in the exam, so be sure to have a look at those. I enjoyed very much one that was called Omega. You can try to look for that. And some others weren't so good, but in general they are good material. Well, now let's talk about speaking. It is very important that you record yourself and listen to your own voice, and you will find that you will not like it, because you're not used to listening to it the way that others do. There are some physiological reasons for that, like the way that airwaves travel inside of you is not the same that they travel outside. So the way that you listen to yourself is not the way that other people listen to you. And get used to that. Don't be discouraged if you don't like your voice. No one does. And be mindful of how your voice really sounds. But don't feel bad about that. Just listen to it a long time and you will get used to that. It is good to read out loud books, several pages at a time, because it develops good coordination in your mouth muscles. But this only works if you know that you're pronouncing right, so you can read and record yourself at the same time and then listen to it and see if you can understand what you say and how it sounds if someone else who is a native read it. If you have the chance, you can even have a native read something and then you read the same thing and record it and compare. Talk to people, yeah. So as it says here, natives probably will think that you speak like crap, but won't tell you anyway to not hurt you. So don't think that because they can understand you, that means that you're doing it right. They just are being polite. So it is very important to record yourself and know how you actually sound. Yeah, sing. If you're into that, it can also give you good coordination. Alright, this concludes the resources for preparing the exam. If you do it right and have some discipline and dedicate time, you shouldn't have any problem. The biggest problem that I encountered was mental exhaustion, especially by the time that I was finishing the listening. So it's a good idea to practice just to get used to the load of work that you have to do for a long time. Then speaking is easy. Don't be scared about that. And that's it. You don't need to waste money and time in classes or books. Good luck.